Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers is a weekly program designed to answer all your questions, including the ones you didn't even know you had, and to clarify the endless debates around the wonderful and fascinating world of sexuality. Join us for real talk about sex from two experts in the field. Richard and Larry Siegel have over 50 years of experience as sex therapists, educators, counselors, and researchers. The Siegel brothers are recognized around the world as trainers of medical and mental health professionals.
Hello and welcome to Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. I'm Ricky Siegel, a certified sex therapist.
And I'm Larry Siegel, a clinical sexologist and certified sexuality educator.
And we are very happy that you've joined us tonight.
Yes, indeed. Welcome.
Welcome. We'd be grateful if you'd hit like and share if you've found your way over to YouTube from Facebook. And if you're on YouTube, please subscribe and share the news as well, because
help us grow, help get this out there.
Every day is time for sex talk.
Yes, and we definitely need more of it.
Friday night is ours.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed.
So we had a wonderful time last week talking with Dr. Lori Mintz from the University of Florida about her wonderful book called Becoming Cliterate, Why Orgasm Equality Matters and How to Get It. And we were thinking of continuing the conversation and talking more maybe back to our usual guy's perspective on clitorises.
Which we definitely want to do and need to do.
Yes.
Right? But we're going to do a little something different tonight. We're going to interrupt the flow just a little bit, so to speak.
Well, still, our memoriam tonight is very much to do with clitorises.
Very much, yes. We're going to pay tribute to the late, wonderfully great Betty Dodson, who we just lost this past weekend, Saturday the 31st. And yes, a lot of these conversations about the clitoris would not be taking place if it were not for her.
Absolutely. Betty Dodson was one of those pioneers, like we were talking about.
Yeah, and that's a word that's often overused, but it really does apply to her.
Yeah, the big ones earned their place if there's a Mount Rushmore of sexology. And Betty was not even a clinician. I guess she did some research, but was primarily an artist, an activist, and advocate.
Yeah, and became an educator, right?
But again, got an honorary PhD from the Institute for the Advanced Study of Human Sexuality in San Francisco.
Right, and and I think what's also really important, and I think was also part of her charm, shall we say, was that even though she was an educator and she was a brilliant educator, but she was not an academic.
Right.
And I think that really worked in her favor.
And yes, if anyone has seen, if anyone had the pleasure to attend, that was a little before our time and outside of our gender box, but if anyone's seen videos of the workshops that she was perhaps most known for.
Yes, the body sex workshops.
In her living room in Manhattan with a circle of women sitting on pillows all around the room.
All of them with their own Hitachi wand.
Magic wand.
Vibrator.
Yes. Betty running around the room going, no, Mary, like that. Move your hand. Like this, like I showed you. And like, wow.
That's right.
I have been censored a whole life, my lifetime. You try to say masturbation to America. They freak the fuck out. They can't even say the word. Yes, playing with your sex organ and giving yourself pleasure seems to be one of the most terrifying things in the world. Thank you, organized religion. Did they do a number?
And all of them also having little mirrors.
Yes,
right, so they can see.
Because, it's fairly easy for men to check themselves out without the use of a hand mirror. Women need to be able to, have a look around.
That's right.
Truly know their vulvas, including all the structures there.
Indeed.
Including the visible parts, and only the visible parts of the clitoris.
Right. In fact, I think you made that point last week when we were talking with Lori, that unlike what most people think, right, there's that general bias that men's sexual parts are outside, women's sexual parts are inside. But I think, as you very astutely pointed out, no, the sexual parts for both men and women are on the outside.
Right. including, don't forget that all of those outside sexual parts are covered in skin, which is itself the largest contiguous sexual organ of the body. And it's the reproductive stuff we have, women have up and inside, right?
That's right.
Because dating would be a lot less sexy if a woman did that certain romantic part of the evening, went and deposited her eggs in a corner of the floor, and the guy went behind her and fertilized them with his sperm, like frogs.
Yeah.
So mammals have all of that process happening inside.
Right.
But sexual anatomy, it's like we've always said, sexual / reproductive is not one word.
That's
It
right.
starts with the S and ends with the E.
That's right.
There's reproductive anatomy and sexual anatomy. And of course, with men, there's a lot more of that shared
There's
utility.
the overlap, certainly.
Right.
Yeah.
What's that old saying? The penis is said to procreate, urinate, and recreate. Whereas in women, those functions tend to be a little more separated, right? Women do not pee out of their vaginas, nor do they pee out of their clitoris. They pee out of their urethra, which is the same as men's, except it ends at the body wall, and men's continue through the length of the penis.
Yes, indeed.
Other
Exactly.
than that, all the structures are pretty much the same. I'm having trouble speaking tonight. Let's drink a sake toast
Yes, indeed.
to the wonderful Betty Dodson.
Indeed.
Her work will live on forever.
Yes.
That's your first sexual action when you're a kid, is you feel your little wee-wee. Oh, that feels good. What is it? Your little tube or a little lump? Ooh, ooh, ooh. Now, what happens with the caregiver who comes along and whop, don't you touch yourself there. That's our first sex lesson, and that is devastating.
And also, on that point as well, that, her influence wasn't just for women. She influenced us as well. You'll be able to see. We'll show you. There's a great photograph that we have.
She grabbed our tushies.
Right, I'll let you figure out why we had that funny look on our face, which she always did. I mean, this woman was a firecracker. She really was. She was funny. She was intelligent. She was fun. She really, and that's one thing too. And we talk a lot about, and people talk a lot about, her main contribution, introducing women to pleasure. But I think nobody really gives her the credit for also introducing women to fun, to sexual play, sexual fun, who even saw that kind of pleasure as not just, some people like to call it a God-given right, but as the foundation for our existence.
Right, which was really, which made her threatening, right? As one of those baby boomer 70s iconoclastic sexologists. She basically said women need to discover and own and luxuriate in this, and we really don't need men that much.
That's right.
She described herself as a heterosexual, bisexual lesbian.
Right. That was one of, and later on, she would just describe herself as a lesbian who's bisexual. Right? But that was part of her journey, and I think that also speaks to how she got to the place that she did. Like many of us actually came into this field sort of by default, because she was mostly an artist in the 1960s, and it really wasn't until after she got divorced in the early 60s, when she started this process of self-discovery. And part of what even triggered that process, as she would talk about, was that she wanted to go out and find herself, yet she was nowhere to be found. And there's that whole idea of what do women want, what can we connect with, and finding a desert, related to female sexuality is really kind of what spurred her on. And she sort of came into this work through her art, because she really did start giving these erotic art exhibitions in New York, much to the, let's say, surprise of some of the gallery owners that would even hire her. Right? Remember her talking
Before
about...
the days of Robert Mapplethorpe.
Oh, way before. Right? Yeah, I mean, this is in the 1960s, right?
Yeah.
The mid-1960s.
Between Georgia O'Keeffe and Robert Mapplethorpe.
Right.
Right in the sweet spot there.
Exactly. And I remember her saying something about she was asked by a gallery owner who saw some of her work to maybe, do some of the erotic art. And I remember her telling one time that when he saw the work that she presented for the gallery, all he can say was, "Holy shit." Right? He said, I know I asked for this, but I didn't think this is what I was going to get. Right? And she just rocked everybody that met her. And really just talented on so many levels.
We have a handful of her wonderful quotes we'd like to share, but one of them she said, "Instead of being a well-known painter, I became everybody's favorite dirty joke." Come to think of it, teaching masturbation skills is pretty weird.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Especially teaching the way she did.
Yeah, she
which
really did.
Most sex therapists and sexuality educators do not have the luxury, nor do I think anybody really these days could get away with that kind of teaching. That hands-on
kind of teaching. Although that's kind of what Patty Britton was, I think, kind of looking at when she started the sex coaching kinds of thing.
Right.
It could be a little bit more hands-on, a little bit more Dodson-esque, shall I say?
Well, probably closer to the sexological body workers that work only in California.
Yeah.
Would you?
Yeah, that's probably true. That's probably true.
Yeah.
Let me just one more quick quote, because again, this I think also sums up a lot of her perspective. And again, masturbation was really, really big with her. Masturbation is a meditation on self-love. So many of us are afflicted with self-loathing, bad body images, shame about our body functions, and confusion about sex and pleasure. I recommend an intense love affair with yourself. Right? That's one of my favorite quotes.
Yeah. Let's take a quick break and come back and share more of the wisdom of Betty Dodson. May she rest in peace.
I'm Rachel Needle, co-director of Modern Sex Therapy Institutes. And Modern Sex Therapy Institutes is a continuing education provider. We provide continuing education for medical and mental health professionals around the world. And we have over 140 archived workshops on our website, so please check them out at www.modernsextherapyinstitutes.com. Also, we have a number of certification programs, including sex therapy, couples in sex therapy, LGBTQIA affirmative therapy, alternative relationships, transgender mental health care, medical sexology, sex education, and sex counselor certifications. In addition, we offer a PhD in clinical sexology. So please, again, go to our website, check out everything that we have to offer. A lot of our stuff is available solely online from the convenience of your own home or office. We do things live in 8 states and live via webinar as well.
All right, and we are back. You want to read a couple more quotes? Some of your other favorites from some of these?
Yes. The clitoris is the female sex organ, and the fact that we aren't told that when we were small children is devastating. We grow up with no information about the pleasure center of our body.
Mm-hmm. And again, she really was also very political. And when you see what was happening in the 70s, and when we saw that rise of feminism, especially in the 70s, she was right there. And she wasn't letting anybody off the hook. She was not anti-male. And that was a big issue that she had with that third wave of feminism that came after that as well.
The male bashing kind?
Yeah, and the sexless kind of feminism. But she also wasn't going to take anything from anybody. Here's another one of the quotes that I like. Because orgasmic sex would lead to women's autonomy, knowing who you are and what you want, women are not going to follow what some jackass tells us we must do. Not all women are going to get married, be monogamous, and raise a family. It'll destroy the current social structure based on a sexual double standard that we're currently living under.
Equal pay for equal work, the Equal Rights Amendment. Is that asking too much? I wouldn't think. To have a woman president? No, the black men got the vote way before the women did. So now I'm coming here from behind saying, okay, let's talk about equal orgasms.
Right? She was pounding on walls. Right? There's no question, pounding on walls, really making changes and trying to free up women. It's not too strong to say that she saw this. I'm not even sure what the word. It's almost a conspiracy of the penis, as it were, that defined everything sexual.
Right.
And women were supposed to worship at that altar too.
She was an early advocate for the idea that intercourse is not the end-all be-all for women's orgasm. That, as we were talking about last week, the small percentage of women who do have intercourse from penis-vagina intercourse, who do have orgasm rather, it's more likely the inside bits of the clitoris that are being stimulated through the vaginal walls. And while we're talking about that, let's dispel another likely myth. Men have spent the last 30, 40 years searching like a holy grail for the G-spot. While it's absolutely clear, there is no part of the vaginal tissue, the so-called roof, the come hither spot on the roof of the vagina, that's in any way different. There's no raised bump, there's no nerve endings coming together, there's nothing that could be identified like on autopsy as, there's the G-spot.
That's right.
But if you look at what's being stimulated, if someone pushes up the top of the vagina, well, those legs of the clitoris are sitting literally around the vagina. Those glands that, remember, come from the same tissue as a man's prostate gland, these paraurethral glands in women, which produce fluid, which may be squirted out of the vagina during orgasm. And everything, it's all touching itself.
As it were. But what is referred to as the G-spot is really just that area where you press up on the roof of the vagina and you're actually hitting the roots of the clitoris. So, remember that clitoris is what we see, what people think is the clitoris is maybe a half an inch long, but there's like another 4 or 5 inches. Right, and tucked under a hood.
Remember, we said last week, if you caught the show, it is literally a little penis. It's built the same way with these tubes of erectile tissue, except remember, no urethra running down the middle of it. But the clitoris pulls up and under the hood when it's engorged and erect, but the shaft bends backward, and that's where it comes down in those two legs. And most people, again, how many men and how, even more amazingly, how many women have no idea. Another powerful Betty Dodson quote.
Well, let me do this because it's right on that same point that you were making as well.
Okay.
Vaginal penetration only doesn't work for most of us, and we are not all meant to be monogamous either, especially since women are capable of having far more sex than men. Try to get that fact across, America. All right, so that's really important. But again, when we were talking about last week as well, what you were just saying about with arousal, and as that clitoris is becoming erect, it bends back.
Well, it's always bent back.
Right, but it's more
pulls
pronounced.
Up and under.
Right, but in addition, you have that tenting of the vagina, and that's why a lot of women, who maybe have difficulty, quote, finding their G-spot, especially when they have experienced it before, but they don't realize that it is not a spot. It is about how they can sort of put the pressure. There has to be arousal. All of that physical stuff has to take place. Right. Just because a woman is wet doesn't mean she's aroused. Right? And that's something that Betty used to point out to women as well, that wetness is essential, yes. But just because you're wet doesn't mean you're fully aroused. And as we talked about last week with Lori, that tenting effect, that shifting. Right? Again, a lot of women don't realize that when you become sexually aroused, your whole internal sexual and reproductive system shifts and moves. And that's necessary. Right? Absolutely necessary. What we call that orgasmic platform. Right? If that's not happening, chances are they're not going to orgasm, no matter how wet they may be.
Right. I'm thinking we need to get Beverly Whipple on the show.
I would so love to
Beverly
get
Whipple
Beverly here.
literally wrote the book called The G-Spot with
Mm-hmm.
a physical therapist named
John Perry.
John Perry in 1985.
Mm-hmm.
And I think where she's landed in all of her research since then was talking about an axis.
Yeah.
Like a clitoral, what is it? A clitoro-urethral vaginal axis is what's exactly being stimulated. But I'll still argue it's really just about the clitoris. Because
I would as well.
As pointed out by the writer Natalie Angier, trans men who have their clitoris removed will not be able to have orgasms.
Right.
Impossible.
Right. And there's no rewiring that.
No. But if they do a phalloplasty, add a phallus, and keep the clitoris intact underneath, then he will be able to have orgasms.
Right. Not ejaculate, but have orgasms.
Right. So this is just one of those real like gut punch kinds of quotes. She says, women who come to see me in her workshops admit that they've never looked at their sex organs, they've never seen their clitoris. Now tell me that isn't a form of being psychologically, genitally mutilated.
Yeah.
For them, the clitoris doesn't exist, but we're worried about women in Africa. And just to continue, if you tell a child, don't touch yourself there, what we were saying last week, you got no business down there.
That's right.
They will deal with some kind of sexual problem from then on to one degree or the other.
Right. And that was also something that she talked about a lot throughout her career and throughout her life, that, the sexual shame, and especially one of the first sexual prohibitions we ever get is around masturbation and touching our genitals. And she said a lot about how that really ruins so much of our sexuality and sexual enjoyment. That if masturbation is damaged, right, I'll use one of her quotes. Masturbation is our first and natural form of sexual activity, and if that's inhibited or damaged, then we suffer for the rest of our lives.
Wow.
And I think that's pretty powerful. There's another one I do like. Right? We being women, we are constantly protecting the male ego, and it's a disservice to men. If a man has any sensitivity or intelligence, he wants to get the straight scoop from his girlfriend or his wife. I remember hearing her talk, just again conversationally at one of our meetings, that she thinks that this idea of men needing to be in control, not wanting to know, that was just absolute rubbish, and that this ego, we shouldn't be protecting it, and that really kind of, man, she had something to say. Where I'm going with this is her opinion of women who fake orgasm. I mean, she was loaded for bear on that one. And I kind of borrowed from that over the years, just in my own way of saying it. But, I've often said that women who do fake orgasm deserve bad sex. Because that's what they're reinforcing.
Yeah.
That's what they are basically telling their partner they want. Right? So it's like, you're asking for it, you're going to get it.
Another good couple of quotes. It's very hard for a man to ask questions about sex, but the smart ones do.
Right.
And I love this. This is just such great wisdom for couples. If you go out to dinner with someone, you find out what they prefer in food. We ought to be able to have a conversation to find out what people prefer when it comes to sex.
Absolutely. And let's do one more, because this was also later in her life. Remember, she was 91 when she died this past weekend.
Never looked
and
a
she
day
was
over 61.
Right, but she was sexual till the end. I mean, she really was. And it was nonstop with her. And this is one of the quotes that she had when she got into her 70s. Said, "I consider the 70s to be the youth of old age. So all you women out there who are afraid of getting older, just keep your orgasms in place, eat a lot of vegetables, take exercise, and you'll be fine." Right? Great advice.
Wonderful words to end on.
Indeed.
Right? So,
Indeed.
Join us in remembering
Yes.
Betty Dodson.
Another toast.
May she rage on forever.
Yes, indeed. And as some great people have said over the weekend, may she rest in power.
So that'll do it for this week's episode of Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. Join us next Friday and every Friday right here on YouTube, 7 p.m. Eastern Time.
Yes, indeed. Stay well.
I see this as the next wave of feminism based on sexuality and female orgasm. And that's going to change the energy in the universe like that.